So here we are looking outside, and I got to tell you, I've been thinking about spring a lot lately. I know here we are in the middle of winter, but I've been now thinking about spring. You see, the thing is, I like the change of seasons. I like the nice warm summers. I love the beautiful ways that the leaves change in the fall. I even like the snow that comes in the winter. I mean, it just changes how everything looks. But there's something about spring that I really long for. It comes right in the middle of things being so cold and dark, and you start seeing those little sprouts coming up, and see the leaves that start to bloom off of the trees. That beautiful kind of green color they have. I just love that. And unless you're one of the snowbirders who are down there, kind of experiencing the warmth all the time, those of us who are still here, I mean, we just anticipate that bringing of spring. Well, I think the other reason why I was thinking about spring is because of a parable that I was reading. And this parable comes from Matthew chapter 13. It's called the parable of the weeds among the wheat. And, you know, Jesus often told parables taking like a normal everyday experience that people would see, and then he turns it and he has like a theological bent to it. And I think not everybody understood the theological part of his parables, but that's why Jesus used these practical everyday things, and that's how this parable really, I found it functioning for me. So again, Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells this parable. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seeds in his field. But while everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore again, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came to him and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them up? But he replied, No, for in gathering the weeds, you will also unroot the wheat among them as well. Let both of them grow together until the harvest, and at the harvest time, I will tell the reapers to collect the wheat first and bind them in bundles and to be burned, but then to gather the wheat into the barn. So again, reading this parable, I mean, Jesus is telling something about something that is a normal human experience. And I don't know, maybe you've had that experience. You start to see the things coming up in your garden, and you go out there and you're starting to pull out the weeds, right? But in the beginning, sometimes it's difficult to distinguish which is a beautiful flower and which is going to be a dandelion. I know that some of you know how to do that, but I know for me, sometimes it's easy to make those mistakes and I pull up the wrong things. Well, Jesus is using this parable to talk about this theological understanding of good and evil, and how oftentimes good and evil exist in the same time. And so he's got these good seeds that are growing, but also these bad seeds that are growing. What are we supposed to do about that? I mean, don't we want just the good to be there? What are we supposed to do about these bad, evil weeds? And we, like the servants in that story, find ourselves saying, do you want us to go and get rid of all this evil? And in this parable, the master says no, because I don't want to chance any of the good being plucked up. You know, if you really put that into this idea of good and evil, that's something I find myself struggling with. When I was reading a commentator, she said, her name is Debbie Thomas, and she said that, makes what I think is an interesting point. She says, I see Jesus asking his followers to hold seemingly contradictory truths in tension. One is that evil is real, noxious, and among us. Two, our response to evil must include both acknowledgement and restraint. Now, I read that and I thought to myself, you know, when it comes to evil, restraint is not something that I want to practice. I mean, when I see something as evil, I want God to get rid of it like that. I want God to take it away. I mean, it is so obvious, it is so bad. Why does God not act immediately? That's how I want God to deal with evil. But it's interesting because in this parable, if we look at the master as God, that's not always how God acts. And you and I know that, right? I mean, we look around and we may see things that we would quickly label as evil and terrible and awful. And we may find ourselves saying, God, why are you not taking care of this? Why are you not getting rid of this? And that may be even a part of our prayer life. And I get that because oftentimes that is a part of my prayer life as well. But this parable speaks to a different truth. And that different truth is possibly a truth that is really difficult for us to buy into, to find hope in. But that truth is that we have to be patient. We sometimes have to wait on God's timing. And in the midst of seeing things that aren't like we want them to be, we need to trust that God will, in God's time, take care of these evil things. You know, when we're in the midst of winter and it is just miserable and we're finding ourselves depressed and struggling because the sun's not out, because we're too cold outside, when we're really struggling with that, we know that spring is coming, right? We know that's going to happen. We trust in the natural changing of the seasons that that's going to come. Can we have that same trust in God? Can we trust that even in the midst of seeing those things that we quickly label as evil and terrible and awful, can we trust that God is going to take care of them? God is going to allow that time that things will be sorted out. It's hard sometimes, and I encourage you, keep praying. Keep praying for God to change things. Keep that prayer going. But in the midst of that prayer, also add that sense of trust, because God is the one who truly will take care of those things that are not a part of God's will.